We're live. Hey, how you doing tonight? Patrick Little here coming at you. Let's do a mic check here. How's the mic sounding? All right. Oop. Hey, how you guys doing? Hello, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. What are the questions? Good. There. Oh. Come on. There. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some current events. We've been seeing just this massive incitement of our women against our men here, and I'd like to say first off that we tend to respect our women. And if you look at the societies that produce the most degeneracy, the most harm to women, these tend to be Jewish-run societies, whether it's the Weimar Republic or 1920s and 1930s, Soviet Union, Russia. Jews exploit women, especially non-Jewish women, and also children. And we can go into that a little bit more later. So you're hearing a lot about abuse of women happening by white males. Now, look at the culture that we grew up in. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I think it's important to recognize what type of social poison the Jews were pumping through the mainstream media, through the broadcast media, through their Hollywood and their entertainment companies. We were taught that the highest virtue was to abuse women. We were taught the highest virtue, the way you could signal your virtue was to have as many notches in your bedpost as possible. And this is a Jewish Hollywood, Jewish entertainment television, telling us that the only way to be a virtuous man is to be like James Bond, just using women and tossing them to the side. Now, this is not a white supremacist or massive chauvinistic European thing. This is a Jewish led culture. And this Jewish-led culture, like the ones of the past, leads to the abuse of women. And if you look at the casting couch in California, in Hollywood, or if you look at what happens to the child actresses across the country at the recording studios in New York, in Hollywood, all over, Jews have been raping little women, children, young girls. And it's very important to remember that Jews have a pattern of setting up a hostile, anti-female environment wherever they go. Women in Jewish communities have no rights. Women are treated worse in Jewish communities than just about any in the world, and even the most fundamentalist Islamic countries do not treat women as poorly as the Jews do. Now, there are a few readouts where women are allowed to have power, but it's more of a feminist thing, a way to divide the goyim, where Jewish women are given power in non-Jewish countries as a means of inciting people against the European-blooded men. And I think it's very, very important to know that in Jewish-run governments and in Jewish-run cultures, women are treated as if they're lower than dirt. So press 1 if you've heard of the coupon system or the gift certificate system that was employed by the Jewish government of the Soviet Union prior to World War II. Has anyone heard of this? Press 1. Women were seen as, all of the women of the Soviet Union between the ages of, I believe, 16 and 30-something, were forced into prostitution by the Jewish government. I will be posting later in the comments to this video a link about how the Soviet government, that was 85% Jewish at the time, forced all women in the Soviet Union to become sex workers. So, at the top levels, the Soviet government was 85% Jewish, and they started a program whereby all marriages were dissolved, and that women were all forced to sign up for a sex registry. And at the top, the Jewish Communist Party members got to have gift certificates for dozens of women a week. They got to go to any household they wanted and redeem their gift certificate, and the man who used to be the woman's husband, if he got in the way, he was killed. If the woman refused, she was raped. If a son, a brother, a grandfather, or a husband got in the way of the Jewish rape of a woman that was somehow legitimized by this Jewish gift certificate system, the men were killed and the woman was raped. Jews abuse and use women in every country they have power. And there were millions, dozens of millions of innocent Slavic women that were raped, sometimes to death, by Jews in the Soviet Union, this 85% Jewish Soviet government. And when I hear these Jews in the Senate, my old opponent Feinstein, these ridiculous Jews that don't value the human dignity of a woman or children at all, when I hear them accusing European-blooded people of having disrespect for women, my blood boils, because no one protects their women like Western countries do. And Jews exploit our women. Hollywood, the casting couches are Jewish. The Me Too scandal, it's all Jews. Pedophilia rings in Israel, where they have underage Palestinian, Ukrainian, and Russian women that rabbis ride bicycles to in Tel Aviv on Thursday nights, and at times of intifada they rape and abuse and beat these Palestinian women. Or during the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, the Jews would show up, the Orthodox Jews would show up and start abusing these underage forced prostitutes in the brothels of Tel Aviv. And I can link reports to this if you like. But Jews abuse women more than any other culture on the planet, especially women from outside of their culture. So we here at the cabinet here, we see the audacity, the chutzpah, the psychopathic levels of audacity coming from these Jewish supremacists like Feinstein, where they accuse white men of abusing women. Doesn't your blood boil? We're trying to protect our women, whether it's little Mary Fagan, who the Jews raped to death in Georgia, whether it's Heather O'Rourke, who the Jews raped to death in Hollywood. We stand by our women. We recognize the dignity of our women. We hope that they all aspire to be treasured mothers and wives, people with families that will take care of them in their old age, and not just sexual objects to be used and tossed aside when they hit infertility. We take care of our women. People like Feinstein support the destruction of women. So this is something we need to really underscore here with the little revolution, with the Expel the Jew by 22 campaign, with the Nationally Social Democratic American Patriotic candidacy of Patrick Little in 2020. We need to make clear that we're a champion for the rights of women and for especially the human dignity of women. We wish to protect our women and little girls from the Jews. We do not want to see the abuse or exploitation of women, whether it's in Weimar Germany or Soviet Russia prior to World War II or here on the casting couch in Hollywood. I will stand between the Jew and his female victims. I will not allow them to exploit our children, to set role models for our young girls that make them feel that they have to become whores to be socially acceptable. And I'm going to shut down the porn industry. I want you to press 14 if you're going to help me shut down the porn industry and imprison these Jews who have been exploiting young women. We're going to shut down the porn industry, and I want you to get excited about that. These women are being wrecked. I recently saw a YouTube video about a young girl who was still in high school, and she was forced into prostitution in the Jewish porn industry. Her agent talked her into shooting gangbangs. The girl was still in high school, so that her mother would stop missing mortgage payments. Her parents were going through a divorce. The Jewish industry of porn sought her out and exploited her, and before she knew it, she was being groomed into group sex scenes in front of a camera broadcast to perverts all over the nation. Yes, look at these different porn sites. They're all run by Jews. And they destroy not only our men, but our women. And I wish to protect the human dignity of our women and the psychological health of our young men by shutting down this porn industry and ending the Jewish exploitation of young child actresses and of economically disadvantaged women. And I'd like to leave off here and start with some questions here about maybe how we're going to shut down the human exploitation industry that is the porn industry, and how we're going to protect the human dignity of women and stop the exploitation of women by these oligarchical Jews who run our entertainment and porn industries. Do we have any questions? Well, I see here someone asked, how do we stop the quote unquote feminazis? And you have to remember, the culture that the women have set up destroys the ability of the man to lead his family and protect his women, whether they be his daughters, his sisters, or his wife. And feminism is a reaction to the vacuum created by the Jewish assault on our culture, where strong men once protected the human dignity of our women and young girls. We now have depraved homosexuals and pedophiles running our social media. We have a mentally ill man who's a homosexual running Twitter, and he allows the ADL, which was founded to protect Jews from pedophilia charges. Yes, that's right. Leo Frank raped a little Irish-American girl to death in Georgia, and the ADL was founded to stop his imprisonment, his death sentence, and eventually they got his life sentence commuted after they brought it down from death sentence. The ADL is a pedophile Jewish organization designed to see to it that no Jewish pedophiles are imprisoned, that Jewish exploiters of women are not punished or held accountable by society. And currently, the ADL and other Jewish organizations make sure to it that no healthy Western men are allowed to run any companies that have cultural influence. So they empower child-raping pedophiles. They empower mentally ill homosexuals that were infected with homosexuality through child rape in their young years. And that is how homosexuality is spread. It is through child rape. And most homosexuals identify as having been homosexually molested during their youth. And homosexuals are orders of magnitude more likely to rape children and spread this homosexual disease than straight men. And I would also like to mention that I would like to castrate all men that have been found guilty of sexual crimes against children. So that's another part of my platform there. And I hear questions here in the chat. I'm seeing questions here in the chat about Christian values, and I'd like to say that the Christian communities that wish to protect the children from these Jewish predators, I'm going to stand with them. And while I may not preach from the podium, I'll leave that to religious community leaders. But I will join with men of every faith, of every race, in opposing the exploitation of underage girls and the cultural destruction of the role of the woman in our society. We want happy women in our society. We want women that are taken care of. We do not want 50% of white women over the age of 30 on antipsychotics, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications. There are statistics you can look at that show the majority of women over the age of 30, I believe Occidental women, are on antidepressant psychological medications that are designed to help them compensate for having been robbed of motherhood, from having been robbed of a dignified position in our society. And when Feinstein sits in our U.S. Senate and accuses non-Jewish people of destroying the dignity of women, my blood boils and my soul screams out for justice against these people who exploit the young women. And if you look at the Russian mafia, it's not Russian, it's Jewish, and this is one of the Jewish organizations. They're ethnically Jewish, the people who run the Russian mafia. One of the chief organizations that is used to kidnap young Slavic women in Eastern Europe and press them into slavery in Israel and around the world after they have been broken in the breaking houses where they're drugged and gang raped until their soul is broken and they submit to a life of prostitution. This is the extreme version of what happens to Goyish women under the jackboot of Jewish cultural supremacism. Sorry, my blood got up a little bit there. The soft version of the destruction of the woman happens at the cultural level. This happens through the glorification of pornography, through the marginalization of especially white women in the media. Out of the one side of the mouth, the Jew speaks about the need for women to have more representation and power, and out of the other side of their mouth, they post the most dirty anti-woman stuff. They glorify men who exploit women, and they make all of these shows and entertainment that drive our men to copy these idols they see on TV, and they exploit and use women and put off marriage and rearing of children. And I can tell you right now, I'm married. Marriage is the most sacred institution in any culture, and the family unit is the foundation of all societal progress. The only way to protect children, the only way to protect women, is to steer them into happy, healthy families. And I'm nationally social, meaning I believe the role of the government should be to promote the health of families, should be to fight Jewish degeneracy and those things which seek to crack the foundation of a happy family unit. You cannot build a cathedral with cracked bricks. The family unit is the brick. Family values are the mortar that hold together this, that are the building blocks and that hold together this cathedral, this our society. And it's so hard to be someone trying to build something healthy in the society when the Jews are constantly trying to mix corrosives into the mortar, when they're trying to crack the foundation of the cathedral, when they're trying to make sure that the bricks don't have any structural integrity. It's very hard to have a healthy society in the presence of Jews, and that's why they've been expelled from so many countries, because they exploit women, because they abuse families. They get men drunk. They get those drunk men to sign contracts that are tantamount to usury, where the man then becomes a slave to a Jewish bank or a Jewish hard money lender. And at that point, the family is destroyed. And anything which is a vice to the family unit, anything which leads to divorce, anything which leads to disrespect for women, is poison to society. And we have to hold these Jews accountable when they say that we, white men, are responsible for the marginalization of women. No, it's the Jew. And it's clear throughout all history that Jews have been expelled from country after country for the exploitation of women, for the running of prostitution houses, for the pushing of drugs and hard alcohol, for the destruction of the family unit. And now, yes, it is always the Jews. That's correct, whipping post. Let's see. I'm going to read some questions here. What's the best way to fight Jewish payment processors stopping us from gaining revenue for our causes and our movement? Bitcoin, Monero, cryptocurrencies. It's a simple answer. Let's see, so. How do we stop porn? Simple. Outlawed. Anyone with a porn production studio will have their house raided. Anyone who distributes porn will be imprisoned. It's simple. It's illegal. Make it illegal and enforce the law. Pornography is degenerate. And I think there's an important point to be made here. Does anyone here know what happens when the Palestinians, the indigenous people of Palestine, rise up against Jewish tyranny and have an intifada? The Jews start broadcasting pornography, hardcore pornography, to all of the broadcast stations that the television sets receive in Palestine. It's a way of emasculating the men and making the men into, passive. Pornography makes you passive. And I would like to invite you to join me in living a mentally Jewish-free life, to put down the porn as I did a while back now. Stop watching porn. I don't think it would be illegal to own porn. I think more the distribution would be. It's like with the drug dealing, which is ultimately controlled by the Jews. You outlaw the distribution of the toxin, which is porn, and you outlaw the production of the toxin. And if people are addicted to the poison, like they are to drugs, to pornography, you offer them services to help. And I think that it would be wise to use tax dollars to help men who are suffering from porn addiction recover from this terrible disease, which precludes them from being healthy members of a family, and also stops them from going out and looking for a wife, because they've got, just like drugs, they get a false high, so they don't go out and achieve things that make them feel good, because they're riding. Yeah, as somebody just mentioned here in the chat, that porn is the same as a drug, and in many ways, neurochemically, it is, yes. Yes, there are porn addicts with wives, but they'll be better husbands if they're not porn addicts anymore. And I hear someone here asking about jaywalking. Jaywalking is something that my business does. That's independent from my campaign. We're on my campaign channel right now. Yes, end the inner Jew. End your pornography viewership. And I see here someone saying that Muslims support me, and I'm proud to accept support from anyone who is willing to step forward and recognize the evils of the Jew. And it is ethically outrageous that the Jews are occupying Christian and Muslim lands in the Middle East and committing genocide and ethnic cleansing against the indigenous peoples of those regions. under a little presidency, we would end the occupation of Palestine and end the occupation of the Golan Heights in Syria, and expel these Jews who illegally occupy this land in Palestine to Madagascar, and figure out a method of compensating the people of Madagascar for the presence of these parasites, these Jews. Someone here said bring back 50s values, and I'd have to say bringing back 50s values doesn't really help, because the Jews controlled our media at that point and began celebrating men who were playboys and exploiters of women even back then. So I think that even 1950s values aren't going to save this country. Now, I see here, don't destroy Madagascar. Well, my question is, can you name a large enough island to house the Jews where we could put an international coast guard around it to prevent their escape? Because you can't just expel them from one country. They'll come back. Look at what the Longshanks did in England. He expelled the Jews from there because they were toxic to the society. And within 7 years, the Jews had bribed politicians to allow the Jews back into England. So just expelling them isn't enough. They have to go someplace they can't escape from. Easter Island isn't big enough. What I would like to do is by isolating the parasite or the disease from the societies that they infest and make sick, I'm hoping that the Jews might actually evolve to become a non-parasitical race in Madagascar. They might learn the value of work and the importance of self-reliance as a people. I see a question whether or not I've recontacted Minister Farrakhan. No, not yet. I've tried to, but I keep on getting my Twitter account shut down every time I reach out to him. So I will be in Chicago in the near future, and I'm hoping to meet up with Minister Farrakhan. And this is a good point right here for me to take a segue into talking about what I call my doctrine of counter-Semitism, and I also call it Step 1 doctrine. So you may say that in order to have a healthy society, again, there are different steps you have to take. Well, let's say that you wish to restore family values to the society. You can't do that while Jews control our media and our banks and all of the culture-making institutions. Step 1 is removing the Jews from power for those who wish to restore values for their families. Now, let's say you're an environmentalist and you're not sure which step you should take first in order to having a eco-friendly government, eco-friendly companies, and a good environmental protection agency. Well, your step 1 is also removing the Jews from power, because Jews control Monsanto and other companies that pollute the earth, the soil, the water, and the seas. I think it's important to recognize that you cannot be an environmentalist in the long run unless you agree with step 1 and take that with every other group that has an interest in taking step 1, which is the removal of Jews from power. Now, let's say that you care about ending the wealth gap a little bit, and you have to remember that Jews are almost exclusively the 1%. Jews run the corporations and thus have the money. If you wish to limit the powers of corporations, if you wish to limit the abuse that can be brought on workers by these Jewish-owned companies, your step 1 is also, as someone who seeks social justice in the economy, removing the Jews from power. Let's say you're a feminist, or someone that thinks that women are marginalized. Well, take step 1 with me until these women-abusing Jews are removed from power, until these child-molesting Jews like Epstein are removed from connection to our government. There's no protecting the women or the children, so take step 1 with me. And you might say, well, you have to, if you agree to take step 1, you then have to then talk about every step you might want to take after that. Well, I can tell you, everyone except the Jews will be willing to take step 1 with me. And I'm not going to start talking about anyone's step 2 or step 3 or step 4 until step 1 is done. No one can worry about their step 2. Now, a libertarian might say, well, I'll take step 1, removing these tyrannical Jews from power that need a big government in order to extract resources for Israel. So that's their step 1. And they might also say, Pat, we're not going to support you unless you promise to agree to all these libertarian talking points. And I can say to them, look, why are you worried about something you need to be worried about after the Jews are removed from power? Once the Jews are removed from power and no longer censoring the internet and social media and the search engines, at that point, the different groups can discuss amongst themselves in a free and open society, in a fair and just press, in a free and open internet, what the best thing to do as a society is, and that is not to put Israel or the Jewish people first. So join me in taking step 1, whether you're an environmentalist, or a Muslim that's tired of the demonization of your people in the Jewish-controlled media, or if you're a refugee from the ethnic genocide being committed by the Jews against ethnic and religious minorities in the Middle East that wish to see sovereignty restored to your countries like Syria and Lebanon. Or if you're a member of the Assyrian people that's tired of Jewish proxy forces like ISIS committing genocide against your people. Join me in taking step one. We don't need to overcomplicate things by trying to get everyone on board with a whole system of ideas that we need to subscribe to. If you're Protestant, if you're a Nordic polytheist, if you're Muslim, if you're Catholic, it doesn't matter. We all have the same step one in advancing the interest of our various groups. We need a coalition of the willing that stands for human dignity against Jewish supremacism. And that means making a very, very wide tent. And if you're a white person that's concerned about genocide against your people, if you're a Palestinian that's concerned about genocide against your people, if you're an Assyrian that's concerned about the historical role Jews have played in genocide against your people, if you're Armenian that knows that the young Turks who ran the genocide against the Armenians were Jews in the Ottoman Empire, team up with me. You can be economically left or right. You can have any values you want, as long as you oppose Jewish supremacism and recognize that you can't achieve any of your goals unless you take step one with a little revolution. You're not going to get advanced towards your goal. So that's my doctrine of counter-Semitism, of taking step one. Mr. Bond asked, do I already have a marketing or propaganda plan for the campaign, ways of getting enough attention? Well, if you read George Lincoln Rockwell or some other patriots who have led their people in an attempted removal of Jews from power such that freedom can be restored, one of the best methods is stunts. So we're being censored off the internet. We're being censored off from the Breitbart discussion boards so that only the Hasbara trolls can then try and persuade people. We have to go in real life. Until the Jews are removed from power, they're going to continue to clamp down on the internet. They're going to stomp out dissent against Zionism. They're going to stomp out anyone that advances any ethnic interest other than the Jewish ethnic interest. And so long as any group that could possibly lead to conflicting interests with the interests of the Jews is censored off the internet, we're going to have to go with in real life propaganda stunts. So I see this as a war of attrition. With my propaganda, I use the tactics that are suitable to a war of attrition. My goal every time I go out with a sign or go out and talk to people and say things that may be shocking, that may trigger their Pavlovian conditioning or their classical conditioning, I'm only hoping that 1, 2, maybe at best 3% of the people who see me in real life or talk to me in real life or see me on the internet or see the hit piece on me might wonder, why would Pat Little say this stuff? And then hopefully they'll visit my website and visit the information. And hopefully they'll poke their head down the rabbit hole that is the JQ. And ultimately, all you have to do is take a glimpse into the rabbit hole that is the JQ, and eventually you'll be on the same page as me, ready to take step one. So, well, Jewish problem, yes, I agree. But it starts as a question in the mind. And the thing is, whether it's Hitler or Rockwell or Gandhi, everyone always starts the same way. They spot an issue that has to do with the Jews and Jewish supremacism, and then crimes against humanity that are committed in this Jewish supremacist name. And they say, well, let's talk about this one issue that's wrong. Let's talk about the genocide against the Palestinians. Let's talk about Jewish control of the financial sector or economic exploitation by Jewish corporations against the worker. And they start with this one issue. They figure out the Jews are behind it, that are the problem in the particular issue they're addressing. And then they get attacked from all angles. As Rockwell said it, the whole tribe comes screaming at you. So anyone that addresses a part of the Jewish question will eventually admit that it's a Jewish problem. Because you might approach the Jewish question from a social, an economic perspective, or from an environmental one, or from a national security one. Regardless, it's all the same rabbit hole. And all we need to do is 1, 2, 3% of the population at a time get people looking down that rabbit hole. So I'm going to look at some more questions here. So somebody tells me to stop trying to scapegoat a tiny minority for every ill in the world. Can anyone here name an ill that the Jews are not currently behind? You might say radical Islam. Well, I can tell you a lot of the leaders of Al-Qaeda and ISIS are converts that pretended to convert to Islam from Judaism. These are Jews, atheist Jews pretending to be Muslims. If you look at 9/11, the war on terrorism, once again, that's all Jewish false flag stuff. You want to talk about any issue facing any group of people that seeks freedom, and the oppressor is almost always Jewish. And I'm been surprised to find out how few cases there are where the Jew is the enemy of freedom, or where the Jew isn't the oppressor in any particular social issue. No, I'm not a Jew. Someone just asked if I was a Jew. Yes, the Holocaust is a lie, Edgar Sanchez. Yes, I thank my Latino supporters here. Yes, the Holocaust is a lie. Steven Spielberg is a child molesting Jew, and he makes propaganda films for Zionists, including Schindler's List, which not even any Jewish Holocaust historian will tell you is an accurate depiction. And I recently went to the Skokie Holocaust Museum as well as the National Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and I spoke the truth there. The video at the Holocaust Museum is already up. That's something a company did. And the one at the National Holocaust Museum will also be up. Yes, Holocaust museums are about a fake narrative. I agree. Yes. Well, Andrew, you say innocent Americans are still paying for the fake Holocaust. The world pays tribute to Israel because of this Holocaust propaganda. And I'd like to encourage you, if you're in California or anywhere in the United States, to send some shekels over to Fitzgerald, who's openly naming the Jew, calling out the Holocaust propaganda, atrocity propaganda that the Jews are using to this day. And just support Fitzgerald. Look him up. He's running for Congress in California, and he talks about the Jewish problem. And he also talks about the Holocaust being a lie. Okay, so somebody asks, what will you do to remove the key root of problems, the Jew? What will you do to make sure Jews don't enter government to further ruin the country? Simple, expel them. We would be country number 500 and something, or at least principality number 500 and something, to expel the Jews. It's the only thing that has ever worked, and it might not be the ultimate end-all be-all solution to the problem. I think that an international coast guard surrounding Madagascar, controlling to make sure that no Jews leave the island, is the ultimate solution. Somebody says, I'm a disgrace from the Marines, and I respond to them asking, how's the view from Tel Aviv, bitch? Let's see. And some radical Greek, too, says just removing Jews from positions of power would be great. Well, when they're being escorted to the boat to Madagascar, that's tantamount to removal from power. Okay, so Mile High says, at the person who mentioned earlier that I may be a disgrace to the Marines, whatever. Do you know how many Marines speak out against Jewish supremacy? I know many. Are you conscious right now? And that is correct. I spoke to many Marines currently serving, Air Force, Army, Navy, Coast Guard, and they all understand the Jewish problem and wish to have these Jews removed as puppet masters that create a situation in which our armed forces are used as a mercenary force for the terrorist state of Israel and Jewish interests around the world, to crush governments that stand up against international Jewish financial tyranny. And we're not mercenaries for the Jews. We're not the Jews' janissaries. We're free men, and we're going to insist and assert our freedom, which involves expelling the Jews. So Anal Release tells me, when you attack Israel, you're a disgrace to your uniform and your flag. How is standing up to a terrorist occupational people that are destroying the freedoms of our country, how is that a disgrace? I'd say it's in the tradition of American, it's in the American tradition to stand up to oppression from overseas, to stand up against agents of a foreign power that wish to continue their tyranny over the American people. No, these are in keeping with the highest of American ideals and values. So someone's asking about secession. Well, I mean, you're talking about secession. Let's secede from Israel as a government and then see if you still want to secede from the United States. Let's secede from Israel and then still see if the country has the problems that we currently have, because we are a Zionist-occupied government that is completely controlled top to bottom. And if you're a politician in this country and you speak out against Jewish supremacism or Jewish tyranny or the occupation of our government, like good Jim Traficant did, you'll wind up dead under your lawnmower like Jim Traficant did. If you talk about the nuclear theft of strategic nuclear resources from the NUMEC facility in Pennsylvania and how Jews compromise our national security, if you hold a position in government, the Jews will drive you out. If you try and get off the Jewish Federal Reserve System like Lincoln or John F. Kennedy want to do, the Jews will kill you. They put bullets in you. That's what Jews do. They're terrorists. And you may say, well, not all Jews. Well, I can tell you one thing, and I've used this talking point a few times. When I talk about the Jews as a people, I talk about them in the same sense that a Marine may have talked about the Japanese during World War II. Now, we may be at peace with Japan right now, but during World War II, no one would have the audacity to go up to a Marine prior to a landing on a beach and ask, hey, how can you wage war on Japan? Not all Japanese people agree with the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Well, I can tell you one thing. When the men were getting out of the Higgins boats and the landing crafts at Iwo Jima, at the different islands that we had to take by force in the Pacific, no one asked them to go up to each individual Japanese soldier shooting from them from the tree line under a white flag and ask, Mr. Japanese soldier, do you disagree with the policies of your government? No? Okay. I'm going to take my white flag and go back to my fighting position. Don't shoot at me while I'm on my way back to my fighting position. I'll shoot at everyone except you. No, that's not how things work in group conflict. The Jews are at war with this. They openly say that they wish for the genocides of entire peoples. The Jews have already tried to use their control of our media and culture-making institutions to convince the world that there's no such thing as a European people, that there's no such thing as a Palestinian people. They unpeople you socially before they commit open genocide against you. And I am opposed to crimes against humanity. I am against genocide. And I'm going to do everything in my power to stop these Jews from wiping out ethnic and religious minorities across the globe. And yes, white people are now an ethnic and religious minority. We're a drop in the bucket of the global population. I believe in human diversity, and I wish to stop the destruction of diversity by these tyrannical Jews, whether it be in the forced population replacement of a country or whether it be the outright genocide like happening in Palestine. I oppose Jews in their efforts at ethnic cleansing and respect the rights and human dignities of all groups of people. So Simon Scola asks, how do we end the opioid epidemic? Simple. You send a task force to raid the Sackler family and you imprison them. You stop the opium shipments out of Afghanistan. By the way, if you want to understand why we invaded Afghanistan, take a look at videos of the Taliban burning all of the poppy fields prior to our invasion. The Jews did not like the raw materials for creating the opioids being burned, so we invaded Afghanistan so the Jewish drug oligarchs could continue to pump their poison into our countries. Let's see. Okay, I see someone saying, Rain Ahmed says, can we be friends with Arabs? Can we team up with them? Absolutely. The dissolution of the terrorist state of Israel begins with friendship between all Goyim. Anytime non-Jews fight against each other in a group conflict, a Jew laughs, a Jew smiles, and the Jews win. Any conflict which does not involve Jews as one of the sides that is fighting is a loss to all humanity. Goyim unite. And I can tell you one thing. The Palestinians that are having bulldozers run through their homes, or the husbands of the pregnant Palestinian women that are getting Jewish snipers' bullets through their wombs in Palestine, they'll take step one with us. The Syrians who wish to maintain their sovereignty in the face of Jewish aggression, they'll take step one with us. The Persians who wish to keep out the Jewish central bank, they'll take step one with us. The Russians who wish to maintain a family-friendly culture in the face of this international Jewish mainstream media onslaught against their country, against the sanctions that have been waged by them by the Jewish-occupied governments of the world, they'll take step one with us. I can tell you one thing, the good people of Egypt and Saudi Arabia will overthrow their Zionist-occupied governments and help us to expel the Jew to Madagascar, where they can't hurt any more ethnic or religious minorities, where they can no longer impinge the dignity of our women and our children. Well, someone here says, Mike Limo says, boycott and divest. How do you boycott and divest AIPAC? Boycott and divestment's only... That's just the tip of the iceberg. They control our government, they control our media, they control our banks, they control our credit card processing. Ultimately, the only way to address the issue is expulsion. That's step one. By the way, I do believe that at some point they will stop my ability to have a political channel on YouTube. They've already shut down my company on YouTube, and at some point, the Polish descended Jew who runs YouTube will shut down this channel. So don't respond to Jews. Well, I do agree. And when I first awakened, I thought that I could go and talk to Jews. So I read The Culture of Critique. And my first step was to go and try and be reasonable with the Jews and start talking to them and bring up some of the major trends and themes that were brought up in the Culture of Critique. And I can tell you one thing, Jews don't want a discussion. They know if you're allowed to talk about some of the bad stuff they've done. They know if you start pointing out the skeletons in the closet, their power is then tenuous, precarious at best. So I have learned that there is no talking with Jews. Through their inbreeding, and through their isolation, and through their hyperbolic endogamy, they have inbred themselves to the point and selected through eugenics programs for the most psychopathic personality types, the most sociopathic personality types, that your average Jew does not have what we Goyim would call a conscience or a sense of guilt or any type of sense of empathy for non-Jews. So here, Just Virgil asks if I have mental health problems. Marine Corps didn't think so, and I held a very good job after the Marine Corps, and none of my supporters think I'm mentally ill. I'm going to bring up a very important point here. In the Soviet Union, under the 85% Jewish government prior to World War II, the psychological manual first invented the term anti-Semitism, and it was called a pathology and a mental illness. Jews have always tried to question the ethical standards of the man who names the Jew. When they fail to show someone as immoral for naming the Jew, they then question their mental health. It is important to remember that before George Lincoln Rockwell was killed, they put him in a mental institution. And he actually wrote a little short piece called How to Survive the Nut House or something like that, which I need to read because at some point, if I keep naming the Jew, they'll probably try and put me in a nut house. Yeah, Goyim Unite, I agree. And Mike Alimo says castration. I think that is a solution for pedophiles. Yes, I agree. Somebody says Jews are psychopaths, no conscience. They kill the best of the Gentiles. That's not only their modus operandi, it's also their system of laws they have from the Talmud. So that's enshrined in their codex of law. So okay, so Tanel88 asked, Patrick, do you have an action plan to utilize your follower fan base resource, perhaps asking them to distribute some approved propaganda? I did that during my senatorial campaign, and I'm going to do that again. So 4chan and people who spread propaganda and awareness through different comment sections and stuff coordinated through 4chan, which will ultimately be taking advice from my campaign server. That's the way forward with propaganda, as well as my IRL activism. Well, if you're interested in supporting the campaign here, I'm seeing this, email onboarding at littlerevolution.us, and we'll get you involved. We've got plenty of work to do. We're setting up a raw video server that can be accessed where people can contribute and submit finalized videos that have been edited for my approval, and if I approve of the videos, I'll post them to my accounts. So I don't know how to say it. Levigroff at 8 p.m. asks, have you heard of Paul Nalen? He was attacked by the Jews too. Yeah, I talk to Paul regularly. I've had some very long discussions with him. Stopped and had dinner with Paul Nalen in Wisconsin not that long ago. Great guy, incredibly even-keeled, incredibly well-meaning. He's one of our best people right now, and I stand side by side with Paul Nalen in opposing Jewish supremacism and shining a light of truth on Jewish crimes against humanity and Jewish crimes against children. Okay, so I see here Desert Wolf says black people name the Jew too. Lupe Fiasco, Cynthia McKinney, Professor Griff, Ice Cube, Malcolm X, Uncle Jackson, Louis Farrakhan. I agree. So African Americans, or black people if you will, tend not to have the same level of Pavlovian programming against naming the Jew. And to most white people, just bringing up the word Jew in a negative context will automatically get them to shut you down. I have another theory here, and I'll formalize this with a blog post where non-whites give whites permission to name the Jew. And this has been a very effective tactic in California. I've had African Americans walk with me and talk with me about the Jew, and whites come along, and I name the Jew. But then when the African American or a member of a different group names the Jew with me, the whites are more receptive. So I think the number of whites that are going to allow themselves to wake up to the Jewish question or Jewish problem is, it takes a very high level of intellectual honesty to really even just touch the issue, let alone really look into it. And one of the top ways to break the Jewish typecasting against people who name the Jew is to show that people of all races and all creeds name the Jew, and that we'll stand united in the hope for world peace against Jewish supremacism and the foreign wars of aggression that the Jews continuously get our country into. And having been deployed as an enlisted man in the Marine Corps to Afghanistan, I can tell you, I don't want to see any more dead American soldiers or Marines or seamen for Israel, and I don't want to see any more dead innocent civilians in any of the countries that are targeted by our Jewish-controlled State Department for invasion. So I'd like to see world peace, and I think that is achievable in our lifetime if we can all take step one together and put together ideological and ethnic differences long enough to remove the Jews from power. Because what the Jews do, if you read the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, if you read any of the stuff in Jewish newspapers for Jews, their goal is to divide and conquer all of the peoples against each other. And as Uncle Adolf said, die verhetzen die Völker gegeneinander. They incite the peoples against each other. Well, I see now that I've been going for about 45 minutes. I have an obligation. I have someone I need to arrange some work with. So it's been a pleasure talking to you. And I hope to hold some more of these campaign live streams in the future because I value your input and I really learn from the questions that I get asked here because there tends to be more intellectual honesty from the average poster here in my live chat than I get from the average person on the street. So have a good night. And remember, let's put America first by putting Israel last. Have a good one, folks.